Hey everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Eggs. This week, our guest is Maddy Martin. Maddy is the head of growth and education at Smith.ai, which provides integrated phone and web chat services for solo and professional service businesses, including their virtual receptionist and intake service, as well as live website chat. She has spent the last decade growing tech startups from New York to California and has expertise in digital marketing, small business communications, lead conversion, email marketing, SEO, and event marketing. Here to talk about all that and so much more is our guest, Maddy Martin. How are you, Maddy?
Hi, good, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Of course. How are you holding up with all the COVID stuff? I assume you're working from home as well.
We're hanging in there. Yeah, I work from home already, and so do all of our receptionists and chat agents, thankfully. So we were not disrupted in that way, but we've definitely been, kind of getting an onslaught of new clients who realize that their office phones that are sitting in their office that they're not going to still need to be answered, and not the best scenario to have everyone forwarded to their cell phones when they've got kids at home too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. For sure. Well, tell us, I guess, a little bit about your background then. I mean, really intriguing bio there. You started in startups and all that stuff, and now you've wound up doing, working for this Smith.ai. Tell us a little bit about sort of your trajectory, your training, the work you do, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's even more varied than that. I was an econ major, and then I went to culinary school. So I actually got my first startup experience because I came out of culinary school, and I knew I didn't really want to work in like the dark, dingy world of restaurants. So I went into food media, and there was a company started by the New York Times food editor at the time, Amanda Hesser. And she created this whole online food community. They were publishing cookbooks. It was at a time when people were sort of sick of like the being dictated by Gourmet and Bon Appetit, like how to make their fancy dinner. Like it was all about home cooks and food bloggers. So we built a huge online community, and it was a great business. I moved from there to another sort of core business related to car repair and maintenance called Your Mechanic. Moved out to California, took that job, led content development. I created this huge car repair advice site online. We were leveraging all the mechanics to answer questions and Q&A about people's cars and maintenance, and sort of like going behind the curtain and demystifying a lot of the things that people get taken advantage of when they go into a car repair shop. Really high transparency sort of model. And then there for a few years and, met the guys at Smith.ai, and they were, developing and had developed like this incredible call answering receptionist service, leveraging, again, like, I guess going back to the home-based model that I found with home cooks at Food 52, just like the strength of leveraging the infrastructure of people who have to be or who want to be working from home, and saying, look, these are customer service hospitality professionals. They have all of these skills, but need the flexibility of the work from home environment. A lot of military families, honestly, who need to move, and the one person losing their job every time they move, right? So they just don't hang on to a job. This is a great opportunity for them to have career growth, and then for the small businesses to also have the opportunity to have that level of service that they typically wouldn't be able to afford. Because a service-based business, your local plumber, lawyer, financial advisor, you're not going to have a full-time staff person necessarily. How do you deliver that level of service without the burden and cost and sort of management of that staff person that you may not really need?
Very true. Let's step back to, I think it's interesting that you went from culinary arts to online SEO and working with more of a business field. Can you talk about how your path kind of went from Food 52 to Smith, and how the same principles apply, and how you kind of were able to go from one to the other without too much of a changeover? Auto parts isn't really like it's a weird left and right.
It's a weird jump. Yeah. But you know what, Mike? I'm going to say kudos to you, because I figured when you heard culinary, you were going to peak up. Mike here is a little amateur chef on his own, and so I figured when you said culinary, we were going down a culinary route. So good for you for sticking to this.
Yeah, no, I mean, so it's really interesting actually. Like when I was at Food 52, I started off as a recipe tester, and then I started highlighting members of the community on their blog, and I was writing, and I was sort of like digging into ways to contribute more there. That was like, it started off as a part-time sort of gig. And then I took over a bigger and bigger role. And what I ended up taking over was all the content relationships that we had with Yahoo and Huffington Post and Lifehacker and, I don't know, like how to make your own Cadbury cream egg, right? It's right around Easter, so I guess that's where my mind goes. And what happened was it was perfectly timed when it was that magical moment when we were trying to get visibility and audience, because that site at the time was running on a little bit of e-commerce and a lot of ads, and we had a relationship with like the Yahoo homepage, Yahoo food editor, right? And she would pitch the Yahoo homepage editor in such a simple manner as it sounds like, right? And we would send, oh, hey, here's this like really cool Cadbury cream egg recipe, and here's the best roast chicken ever. And I would literally send her an email, and then the next day it was on the homepage of Yahoo, and we would get 100,000, visits in a short amount of time. And it was just like this really organic, natural time that ended up driving a ton of content strategy and syndication and just work around there that built up my skill set around that, so that when I talked to the guys at Your Mechanic, I was used to a very fast-paced atmosphere, which is not for everyone. That's sort of like the hallmark of the startup. But I had a lot of experience around what is the meaty, attractive content that everyone wants, what is that formula, and how do we actually build that into a huge advice portal on the site? How does that inform our landing page and our conversion? So that's sort of like that continuation there.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. There's so much in parallel. So despite your background and despite your training, the sort of on-the-job work you did is what drove you into this.
If you have, there are a few things, right? Like I was an economics major, so I have that analytical sort of bent, and I think for any marketing person, it's critical, right? Like you have work with data scientists that you work with engineers that you've got all this rich data, and it's like, how do you operationalize that? How do you build that into a playbook? That's always in the marketing person's like toolkit, right? And that is like your proof of, your necessity to have a seat at the table, right? So the economics background always served me well. And I think actually like, the thing with content is that it has so many different applications. Like the content that you use for a landing page or ad copy or Facebook, the tone and the style and the mass of it, like that is something that looks easy, but it's actually a lot of decision making that goes into that.
So what kind of,
once you know that, you sort of like build it into whatever business model you're working for.
What kind of things would you change for a Facebook ad versus like a homepage spot? Or, that's pretty broad and vague, but like, what are some of the nuances that you would do different for one platform than another?
Well, I think it has to do a lot with like your audience and your brand awareness already. I mean, if you're Microsoft and you're a household name versus a startup, you are going to need to explain a lot more about what you do. And I think that right now what we're getting at is giving before you ask. So content that has checklists and actionable items is super key. Are you delivering something that is immediately of value and of use to that lead, to that person who's visiting your site? Are you attracting them there through a really great Facebook ad or content piece or landing page that actually has that download, that checklist, that interactive tool, that calculator, whatever it is? That is, I think, a really great thing to go out on the front lines with, whether it's Facebook or Twitter. If you're looking at Reddit, like what is appealing? What is sort of an announcement and offering that you can provide that's not just like a coupon code or a promo? I think also, obviously, with social ads, you're getting a lot of retargeting and abandoned carts and things like that. So that's its own beast. But on a homepage, depending on who's coming, probably a lot more high level, conceptual plus features that you're going to roll into. There's really a formula at this point. You're going to have a brand value, you're going to have features, you're going to have testimonials, you're going to have a call to action, maybe a Calendly embed or something so that people can book a demo or learn more. There's going to be sort of those like portals into the rest of the site or the product. So it's really apples and oranges, but it all comes down to your target audience and how do you speak to them, understanding as best you can where they are in terms of like their familiarity with your brand. Sure.
That makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about Smith.ai. What is it? How I've seen it's like you got chatbots, you've got all sorts of different stuff. Is it integrated into your personal website, or is it kind of an all-in-one platform?
So it's omni-channel. We answer calls, we return calls. So if you've got a web form fill, we'll respond to that and actually use the business's phone number. We have a chatbot. We also have live staff chat. And then we also have live staff that can answer text messages and Facebook messages. So what happens is we're able to answer on behalf of businesses, no matter the communication channel preference of that client or potential client, right? So you may have a really great, system set up for your phones, but if people really want to try and reach you by text or Facebook or right on your website where they're going to probably go before they call you, you want to make sure that the people's preferences is not determining their experience first with your brand. That communication is consistent across the board, that you're equally as responsive and friendly and helpful on any of those channels. And I think when you work with a singular company that can handle both the sort of human talent and the tech, you get a really consistent approach, only one sort of management operations channel you have to handle, and value where if you update or change your brand or you have a campaign, there's only one person to contact, one monitor, right? It's that account manager that you have. And for businesses right now, they're dealing with so much noise and opportunity, and right now we're dealing with COVID. There's a lot of change afoot. I think streamlining operations is becoming even more important.
Well, and maybe to that, and let's talk a little bit about that streamlining, especially given, sort of an emergency situation like we have now with the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
But knowing that eventually, there will be a new normal on the other side of it, whether it's back to what it was or if it's some kind of new something. So how are digital marketers and strategists thinking about that going forward? I mean, are we just being responsive in the moment and then looking for something longer term, or are we already planning for the future?
I mean, I think that there is definitely a new normal. The simple fact that the work from home setups have now been established means that there is potentially incredible efficiency and cost savings from a brick and mortar cost perspective that's reduced if companies recognize that this is something that can be sustainable in the long term, which we are hopefully proving it can be. I mean, that is our bread and butter, right? Our entire team of hundreds of receptionists is actually already working from home. Plenty of businesses do this. Yeah. Some were planning for it, some weren't. But here's the thing. If you recognize sort of the cost savings there, and if you adjust processes, right, to accommodate maybe not having that, physical proximity in your staff, what you can do is you can allocate those costs, those savings to your campaigns, to expanding your features and services and products, right? That can be reinvested in the business. And I think that that's a huge opportunity. Plus, there is more comfort than ever in sort of connecting with businesses and partners and clients in this way. So if you were running a business where you have so many in-person meetings and consultations, like that means that a 30-minute meeting becomes a lot longer, right? And it means that there's drive time. It means that there's traffic, factoring in. You've got staff who are fatigued from their commute. If all of that is potentially going away, as we're seeing right now, but the rest of life is back in order, right? Like people are, restaurants are open, like all these businesses, barbershops and bars, they're all open. we resume to life as normal, but we actually gain not only access to the things that we love and need, but then also so much more time and so much less headache and stress from eliminating commutes, from eliminating people being late to meetings. Because guess what? If you've got it on your calendar in a Zoom link, like, you should be on time, right? It's not going to be a 30-minute delay because of traffic. So operationally, we see a lot of efficiency, and there's just a lot of opportunity to reinvest that money in things that actually grow the business rather than the infrastructure costs we had before.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good perspective. So in my other life, I run a remote work advocacy and consultancy. And so we spend a lot of time in and around remote work and all that stuff. And this is one of the topics that we've been exploring a lot lately is this, what does business look like if remote goes well? There are a lot of companies that just jumped into this, and for sure, there will be plenty of companies that had a bad experience and go right back to the office. But for the companies that this works for, like, why would you go back? Like, I mean, it totally changes your, preconceived notion of this idea that we were going to leave, go work from home, and then come back to our office. Yeah. And so I think it's an interesting topic worth exploring because, I think so much of the success in remote work is going to rely on leaders, good leadership that knows how to communicate, knows how to take care of the emotional needs of people working remotely if they never have before, if this is a whole new experience for them. And so, but I think that, at least based on the statistics and the things that, remote advocates are constantly espousing about production and everything else, if any of this stuff actually works out, like if it happens in practice, there would be very little motivation to go back to traditional.
Well, absolutely. And a lot of the negative aspects of what's happening right now is that we have just an onslaught on the bandwidth of, the internet, basically. But it's a lot to do with the fact that we have a health crisis and actually not much to do with the fact that you're working from home. So I think we really have to divide those two factors and say, hey, working from home is super cheap and efficient and effective, and it makes my employees happier and me too. And once the rest of life comes back into order, I think that maybe 90% of those negative aspects go away because the demand on the business is low and there's uncertainty. And, did you have someone in your company who's affected by COVID? These are all things that matter a lot right now and breed a lot of stress and anxiety, and maybe even reduce the demand for your business. But that has nothing to do with actually the function of working from home and how efficient and great it is. Not to mention that this happened at a time when technology is cheaper than ever. If you said 5 to 10 years ago that we could get a work from home setup for basically the equivalent of, I don't know, maybe max $50 a month per employee, max, for the regular small business. What does it cost to have a, VoIP phone system? $25 a month, right? So that to me is an exceptional sort of example of timing coming into play here. And I don't see things going back to normal.
Yeah, I actually am really kind of intrigued to see what the next phase will bring. If it stays that way, just think of all the commuting time and all the just think of a place like Seattle or New York, where everyone's always driving to work, always taking the subway, always doing, it's an hour, 2 hours of your day that you're just getting to work. If you can eliminate that out of the process, I mean, it's great.
Well, and that's the thing beyond time, they talk so much about carbon footprint and other things like that. Right. I mean, to your point, reducing traffic, reducing stress on internal infrastructure within cities, things like that. I mean, there's a lot of positives that are sort of intangible or tangible, but distant. And not everybody thinks about those things, but there are so many positives to this idea of working remotely that,
think about cooking also, right? How many people there's this whole thing on Facebook about everyone making banana bread apparently, but there is a huge meme. I'm in a Facebook group called Quarantine Cuisine. There's this whole joke around quarantine 15, that you're going to, gain your freshman 15 or whatever, which I think is funny. But, the interesting thing is that people are probably, despite the quarantine 15 meme, going to get a lot healthier if they're at home. They have access to their fridge. It's not, what did they bring for lunch today? And, oh, that sad looking sandwich, I'm going to go out to eat. like they are probably going to be much more mindful of resources that you're speaking to, not just like the gas and the sort of road wear and tear, but think about also the wear and tear on your body. Like it's great to be able to have access to your kitchen and make yourself a homemade lunch and save so much money not eating out. And then when you want to eat out, you do so in the evenings or weekends or whatever. Like, what does that mean for the health of the population? And then what does that mean in turn for productivity?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I mean, even just in my own case, I mean, we've basically been cooking every meal since, being quarantined. And I too like to cook. I'm not as advanced as Mike here, but I do okay.
I don't know. You make some pretty good food.
And you guys should join the quarantine cuisine.
Oh yeah, I got to check it out. So just for some variety, I think my kids are losing their mind. But because I keep going to all the staples, the things I'm really good at, or the things I can make that will last us for weeks. Yeah.
There's something to be said for that, like pantry, sort of. Grab bag meal. I think there should be maybe some competitions that come out of that.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so it's been great. Also, I mean, in like November, I bought a Peloton, and so we have our gym here, we have our kitchen here, we have everything here. Right. I mean, I'm eating better than I used to. I'm working out more regularly than I used to. I mean, like for me, it's actually going quite well. I think I'm down 15 or 20 at this point. And so for me, it's going quite well. I know that isn't the case for everybody, but I think you make a great point about just sort of overall health, and we were talking about this yesterday with one of these, remote working groups that I'm in. And we were talking about the sort of just the mental aspects of, being home with family and spending more time with your kids and, being able to, interact more with the people you want to and be more flexible and purposeful with your time. And, I think a lot of people are going to be asking themselves when it comes back to a 40-hour grind in the office, what am I doing? Like,
what am I doing and what are my choices, right? Because there will be those companies that right now realize that you have a competitive advantage if you make this a value prop for working for your company. And I think there's also a huge thing around the shift. And frankly, we go to a lot of events and conferences, and the success of the virtual conference or summit, the even Zoom collaborative meeting, like these are things that are dramatically changing, I think, the budget line items, right? So like what we're seeing is there are more attendees for online events and group Zoom chats. They're getting hundreds of attendees when before there were in-person events that may get 100 and then the online webinar would have 20.
And now you're not flying people, you're not putting them up in hotels.
I mean, yeah. Oh, don't even talk about the cost savings there, right? But the amazing thing is that I think you realize when you have to be cut down what it is that you miss, what can you live without, what is it that is a value or an opportunity that you wouldn't have explored if something hadn't been taken away from you, but also just like the sheer interaction and connection that can happen at much less sort of overhead and planning cost. Like people are spinning up events within weeks when these events would have taken 6 months in advance to plan. What does that mean? And the satisfaction is just as high. It means that like the actual expectations and the deliverables, a lot of it has to do with the interactions and the conversations you have at these events, access to experts and their advice. Like the content and materials you're taking away are the same generally, right? So if this gives you, and many times it's more collaborative, more of a voice, more of a connection with your community, like what does that say about our readiness and the value of like, the events marketing space?
Yeah, no, it could be really interesting just to see what happens. I mean, I imagine, or at least I'm a big advocate for, still doing things in person and experiencing things in real life as much as you can. I too work from home, and so this hasn't been a massive transition for me outside of my new coworkers because my wife and kids are here at the house now, and so now it's a little less quiet than it used to be. But nonetheless, every now and then I still would go to like a Starbucks to work just to be around human beings, or every now and then I would want go to a co-working space or whatever, just for the opportunity to be around people. Go ahead, Mike.
It's funny how you I don't go to Starbucks to talk to people. I just go to Starbucks to have people around me, and I'll still have my headphones in and I'm still working and doing everything I do, but it's just that change of pace that just,
and there's an energy.
Yeah, there's something really
Yeah.
important about people, right? And
Mhm.
the way I equate things like video chat and even like what we're doing here on Zoom is, I sort of look at like if you're filling a glass of water, like this might be a 9 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 or a 9.5 out of 10. But if we had sat down and we're having this same conversation over a cup of coffee at a local coffee shop or whatever, just being able to look at a person and look into their eyes and see their body movements and things like that, like it's an extra layer. Right. And it's not to say that you can't be perfectly productive over Zoom or any of that stuff, but there's definitely still an aspect of life that's missing. And so I think it's important to do some of that. So like while I love these virtual conferences, I'm going to like 2 a week at this point because they're so available.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finding that, I still, maybe every 10th one wouldn't mind flying off to Austin and going and hanging out.
Yeah, I feel you there. And actually, so I work from home, but 25 to 50% of the time on a normal week, right? Like I'm traveling to conferences, speaking, events, exhibiting, all of that good stuff. And I love doing that. So
yeah, I think it's just
the burden relief. And for some people, it's like, I definitely miss that.
Yeah, well, it's one of the big things that like I advocate for in the remote work stuff that we talk about, because most of the remote work, like I think a lot of people hear remote work advocate or whatever, and they think, oh, well, you think everyone should work remote, and it's this whole thing. For me, it's more about what you talked about earlier, which is choice and being able to choose to work remote if that fits your schedule or fits your lifestyle or whatever, because not everybody's great for this. But then, the other bit is just that human relationship part and keeping those up. And it's really easy to get secluded when you work remote. And, the seclusion is not generally good for anybody. And you can do so much, great things with communication tools, even email and Slack and instant messaging services, whatever. But I think it's still really important to get your little bit of human every now and then, even if you're not getting your social juice from your coworkers. Maybe you're just meeting a friend for coffee or something afterwards. But, it could be wherever. But I think that you've still got to just mix in that little bit of human.
Yeah. And also so it's funny because I was going to use the word like in tandem, but there's actually an app called Tandem that's cool. It's sort of like not co-browsing, but like permanent sort of presence with a workplace, right? Like you're always sort of in the corner of my screen and I'm in yours, and we can just like say, hey, Ryan, and we can chat. That's sort of the thing that we see coming up where it's less asynchronous, like which chat can be very asynchronous, right? Like you can send a message and then maybe you'll get one back depending on the urgency that you convey in Slack or Teams, right? But what's interesting is that like there is something really huge about video that it gets you closer to to the approximation of like sitting there together at Starbucks, right? Yeah. And I think that when there used to be the feeling that whenever you would get on a video call, like maybe 10% of the time people actually got on video, and another like 90% of the time everyone just had the black screen and like the little bubble that would bounce as you spoke. So it feels like people are getting more and more comfortable being on video and showing their face, and that's a really great thing to see. And I think also what I hope comes out of this is that there is more respect for that remote work, virtual work, working from home, because it used to be almost a dirty word. I remember when I moved to Silicon Valley for the first time, actually a VC advisor who I was talking to said, Maddy, the first thing you have to do is stop working from home and get a new job. And I thought, well, that's crazy because I'm the most productive worker ever, like I do a great job. How am I going to work from an office? I'm going to lose so much productivity. Most people don't think that way. They haven't had that experience.
Yeah. So, well, and I think it's got, boils down to fear, right? I think most managers, most leaders, at least on some level are afraid, right? Whether it's a manager who's afraid for what their role might be if all of a sudden everyone must manage themselves. Or if
you need management and process with anything.
Of course. But I think, the roles shift and the roles change, right? I mean, if you switch to a base where you're going from hourly pay, measuring hours, for example, to measuring outputs, then the individual who's working from home might be on the hook for more outputs, right? And they might be managing their own day a little more, where in the past, maybe a manager would have overseen something.
if you're the person who like is still hanging on to your job because you make the office laugh, like,
Right.
your job is at risk right now. You know what I mean? And I think that's sometimes scary to people. It's like, it will be more measured based on productivity and numbers, because like that is what you see of people who work from home, like of our receptionists and the chat agents, like, we can see and review these conversations and the volume of them handled by the different agents and the, satisfaction scores and things like that. Like, it is going to be a much more data-driven world. I think that's a good thing, but I think that it is definitely threatening to a lot of the status quo.
Yeah.
So let's jump back into Smith.ai.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that. How does it say I'm signing up for your process? What's the normal
sort of onboarding?
Yeah, onboarding process. And then what type of services can you offer a small business?
Yeah. So the bread and butter is phone answering and intake, right? And really taking the conversation much farther than just the, take a message or transfer. The meat and the value in Smith.ai is having that conversation that is productive and qualifying a lead or getting and capturing the information in order for that business to do so effectively. So what it looks like, because we do so much of the workflow, we're doing the screening, the scheduling, intake, we're providing basic FAQ for a business, whether it's on calls or these extended services of web chat, Facebook message, text answering. We need to know a bit more than your average bear, right? So what we do is we have an intake form. We ask a few questions about your business. We say, who do you work with? Do people work for you? Various questions about your calendaring systems and your CRM. So are you using Salesforce, HubSpot, anything like that you use to manage your business, that we should put these conversations into through an API, not literally typing in, at the end of the day, so that you're in sync and in step with what we did for you. And after that, we do a 20 call, 20 chat free trial, no payment, you're getting that completely free and full, so that you can experience the service and so that we can refine your directions, because it really is very customized, so that we know your criteria for screening leads, for example. And we know if you want us to call back someone who completed your web form, what we're going to say in that conversation. And if we have a good one, do we transfer them to you live? Do we schedule them on your calendar? Do we follow up with an email for an assessment form or a link to a product? Whatever the case may be. And then you get started. Our plans are month to month, and they start at $140 a month. So it is a very low risk, low sort of dent in the budget opportunity to deliver exceptional service to your clients, to have consistently answered sort of calls and chats. If you're running marketing campaigns, that's the number one determining factor for success. And you can, kind of scale up or expand what you hand off to us at any time.
Interesting. So you guys focus mainly on legal. That's kind of like your bread and butter for the most part, right? Say I'm a landscape company and I have people calling about yard work. Would I have to sit down with a rep and actually go over like, oh, this is what I charge per square foot. This is what I charge for this. This is what I do for that. The object is to essentially eliminate a lot of the back and forth between the client before you're essentially just you're validating the
We're your inside sales team, basically, right? We're qualifying. So we have an intake form. Yes, we work with a lot of attorneys, probably like 60% of our clients, but frankly, my feeling is if we can serve a very complex, highly educated, very, sort of ethically and professionally regulated vertical, we can handle almost anything else under the sun, unless it's like nuclear physics or something, right? So the important thing to remember is that, like, yeah, that's a really complicated business, and then there's a spectrum all the way around it. So it doesn't have to be a phone call. If you prefer to talk about your business with an onboarding team member, you can, but it's really just, completing that form. A real human being reviews it and makes sure that it's going to be operational for us. And then we follow up and we say, all right, we're ready for you to install the chatbot on your website, or to forward your calls to us, or, give us the ability to mask your number on caller ID when we make that call, right? So that we're showing your business number when we call your lead. So everything is really seamless. And we, adopt this persona for your business, and you have access to every receptionist. So it extends your hours, it extends your capacity. You can seat us in just for overflow or in a department if you want. So let's say that you've got a business like lawn care, for example, and there are only certain types that, maybe you only do a certain size lawn and above. I only work with properties that are, an acre or above or whatever, or also need gardening services, who knows. And then that's sort of a qualification step, right? So why should that person get passed to the business owner or the salesperson if they're not qualified to even become a client? That's where we sit in. We sort of pre-qualify that lead, and then we can take the next step. We can get them started with the new client form. We can follow up if they were supposed to complete it and they haven't yet, or they've got an appointment coming up and we want to make sure they're going to be there because the business owner is going to be there, right? So all of these things, even following up on like late payments and unpaid invoices, any sort of like admin task or chore other than like really specialized stuff, we're going to get your Starbucks coffee for you because we're virtual. Like we can handle quite a bit of tasks. And now that we're doing these emails and text post call, I think that follow-up task, that after call sort of, memorializing that conversation is the latest thing that we've added that I think is actually really impactful, that takes yet another step out of that workflow for getting new clients. But if you've got a technical team or support or billing, and we're just literally taking the call and transferring it to a technician or someone who, is on your, billing or accounting team, then we can handle your calls differently based on the type of caller who's coming in as well. Not to mention like the spam blocking, because that's probably like 20 to 30% of your calls.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So once somebody's sort of set up with you, like how do you determine which, different marketing tools to use? For example, things like chatbots, live chat versus phone calls. Is this a discussion that you guys have, or are these all add-ons to the main account, or how does that fit work?
Well, so what we recommend is that you basically, with chat, it's a total no-brainer to get it up, because either you have a free trial for the live staff, or you have the chatbot that's forever free with unlimited chats. If you don't have chat on your website, like you're missing out on those conversations that come through, and even like the queries and the SEO content value of what people are typing in to ask you things, right? Especially with like Google not giving you those keywords anymore. So you get those queries that people typed into Google just typing into chat, because chat's become like the search function on a website in many ways. But what you get instead of like a search function is that when someone has to put in their name and email and phone number to ask the question, they're already sort of pre-qualifying themselves, and then you can follow up. So to me, like how you get started is either with the trial. If you start with calls, which many people do, then we look at your account and say, we can do this for you on your website too. Let's at least do that trial and test. But what's motivating you often is the type of business that you have and the capability of your in-house teams. Like people who have in-house teams, they're probably pretty capable on the phones. And that may not be a system that they want to rock right away. So they set us up for overflow, the calls that the team can't get to, or, the ones that are beyond their hours for their staff, but they set us up for chat right away. It really completely depends on the needs of your business and your staff capacity. We don't see people training their in-house teams to learn how to answer chats and be interrupted more by the noise that creates. They really do want to get started with chat and completely hand it off to us at the same time, whether it's the bot or live staff.
So you mentioned something about the chat bot that I find interesting is the SEO and the using it to figure out your keywords. Mm-hmm. Are we able to actually download the transcripts, or do you manage that data for us, or how is that incorporated into the plan?
So you get the transcript after every single chat, whether you're on the free chatbot or you're on the, low cost live chat plan, and that will get emailed to you. You can get a notification via SMS as well, or Slack. And then you also can have that transcript logged in your CRM. So like Salesforce, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, wherever. And it plugs into Zapier. So you can pretty much do whatever you want with it, because through Zapier, you can set up Zaps for whatever workflow you're looking to do. Now, the nice thing is yes, you can download it. You can, go through your chat dashboard online and see the conversations. You can sort of automate Q&A. You can automate these sequenced conversations where you pre-qualify leads. But the really nice thing is you have so much rich data where you can say, let's use the attorneys for an example. They're personal injury attorneys, and they have let's say, car wreck, car accident sort of keywords. What we know is that's actually really regionally driven. So if you have a website and your homepage, we were talking about homepage content, right? It's the perfect example. It could say your, car accident attorneys. If everyone in chat is talking about, hey, can you help me with my car wreck, or I have I wrecked my car, right? They're not saying car accident. Well, maybe you should change the content on your homepage to use the language that people are using in your chat. Because I guarantee you, when you're on the phone, you're not thinking about the SEO value and the content of the conversation with that level of specificity and detail. But when you see it in a text-based mode of communication, then you really start to, be able to take that transcript, download it, and process it in bulk, and sort of use a, keyword analyzer and upload all of it and say, like, what are the key phrases that are most common that I'm not addressing on my homepage? But even just, anecdotally, you'll be able to see pretty quickly, like, what are people saying and how are they describing their needs? And is there a gap there with how you describe your business and offerings?
Do you guys? Go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, what kind of volume are you looking at? Like, at what point does it make sense for somebody to engage with a business like a Smith.ai? Like, I mean, for the mom and pop business that just gets a couple calls a week, does it make sense to have that kind of infrastructure in place, or is there some threshold that they should hit?
Oh, definitely. I mean, so our lowest plan, first of all, the chatbot that's free is, unlimited, no cost. It could be one a year. But frankly, I mean, the plans that we offer are 20 calls, 20 chats a month, all the way up to hundreds, thousands of chats a month. So really, it's just based on a per chat, per call price. And you prepay for that allotment, and then you pay overage on top of that. So if you have 20 calls, it's $140 a month. It's $7 a call. And there are some optional add-ons that you can address if you want more robust workflow and more complicated setups. But let's say it's $7 a call. But if you come to us and you say, the 20 call plan is a little bit heavy for me. I'm not getting, 20 calls in a month. I'm only getting, maybe 10, or on my website, I'm really not sure. I want the live staff, but $140 a month is too much of a test. Well, that's why we have the free trial. And that's to determine how quickly you go through those 20 calls or 20 chats. And we can build a custom plan for you. So we even have clients where we will build like a 5 chat plan a month, because if they get that one client from that chat, it more than pays for, like, blows out the ROI on the spend for a slight increase in the cost, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was actually going to ask, do you guys do SEO content as well, or is pretty much the chatbot and the phone answering systems pretty much?
Yeah, we don't get into, we get asked that a lot, actually. We don't get into any marketing agency services right now. We are really focused just on the communications and across channels. So if we're going to and we are, as we expand our services, it's not so much expanding in terms of the use of the data and application, but it's more expanding the channels and the depth through which we go into the channels. So if you ask me like what my prediction is for Smith.ai, I'm going to tell you, I want to be answering, WhatsApp. I want to be answering, any direct messages or something on Twitter. Like these are the areas that we're getting more and more into. So how do we, across every way that someone can contact your business, respond for you so that you only have an interruption or noise when there's a qualified lead or an existing client who needs to talk to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. Nothing worse than getting a phone call for nothing and you have to sit there and answer 20 questions, even though they're not
Not only that, but like so two things there. One is that frankly, like, as a business owner, you're more tolerant and less strict with following your own rules. So if you hand it off, generally those conversations are just going to be shorter. But the second thing is that you can get a negative review online. Even if that person never hires your business, it's like writing a bad review for a restaurant because you didn't like the hostess who seated you at the wrong table or whatever. People write negative reviews online for all sorts of things. So you want to be having those conversations because that leads to the best potential new client, but also less frustration for you and probably a better experience on both sides of the table. But yeah, I would say like one of the things that we do that is lesser known is referring those unqualified leads to other business partners that you have, because that can be a really time-consuming task, but super valuable for your networking, super valuable if you get like a spiff or referral fee from those other businesses that you refer out to that are not competitive. You want that client to get the service, you want your friend's business to get the business, but it's not a good fit for you. But that follow-up task of like, now I have to do this thing for someone who's not even going to be my client actually is one of the areas that we help out with that is lesser known.
That's actually a good feature. I've been in the DJ world for quite a long time, and I'll get calls from middle schools and high schools, and I don't deal with that anymore, but I'll refer them to a friend or this or that, and it ends up taking 20, 30 minutes of my time.
It does.
To help them out, and really that's kind of a nice little feature. So
yeah, no, I think that it's one of the lesser known things. That plus like chasing down late payments, like one of the things that business owners are so not great, maybe slightly delinquent at doing across the board is chasing down the clients who owe you money. And you probably have a close personal relationship with them and it's not comfortable. No one wants to talk about money and you don't want to make it a transactional relationship, if the person is sort of close to you at that point. So bring in that like neutral third party, bring in Smith.ai to say, hi, following up on this invoice that we have, it's still unpaid. Can I collect the payment from you? Take the credit card over the phone, done. The money's in the bank, no reputation or relationship has been damaged.
That right there is almost a key selling point for me, just because I hate making those phone calls. I hate calling and saying, everyone hey, does. Pay me. But having that third party that it almost acts like your accounting side of the deal and your collections, and it makes it more neutral for you, where you can still be on good terms with the client, but still get the point across that you need to get paid.
Well, it's the real life equivalent of me always answering emails and stuff in the form of we. Like, so a lot of times, especially when I was younger in business, it was always, oh yeah, we'll take a look, or we'll do this and that. And I still slip into it all the time. But the idea was to look bigger than we are, right? This is somehow me shifting the blame or dispersing the responsibility here. And so the real life version of this is having somebody actually responsible for it versus just saying it out loud.
And not only are you getting that money, but also not at a 30 to 50% cut because you went with some collections agency, right? Like if you pay per call or per chat, it actually has like a huge reverberating effect. So you know exactly how much it's going to cost you to request that task of Smith.ai, right? You're like, I am giving you 10 clients to call. I know I'm paying for those 10 calls, easy math, right? And I have this much, like these thousands of dollars of invoices, like, definitely makes sense to just accept the 2.9% credit card fees, get the money in the bank, and it's $7 a call or whatever it is, $5 a call. It depends on your volume, right? So you do that task, you get the money in the bank, and then you think, we were talking about process, a lot of our clients who've been with us for a while then say, hey, I have this idea. Can you do this? Can you follow up on these people who I met at this event or I put on that Zoom webinar and I want to reach out to the people? Cool. Basically, as long as they're not going to hang up on us like we're some spammer and they know who you are and we're following up as a, basically member of your business, then we're happy to make those calls for you. So, create a way.
So to that end, you guys don't do anything with lead generation then, right? This is just pre-qual.
We're not cold calling lists. We're not, no. Okay. We're not doing list building either,
Okay.
So anyone who's going to warmly accept the call, basically.
So do we get a transcript of the conversation where we can sit back and see what they talked about and maybe
text-based, yes.
Okay.
But not on the phone. We don't record calls unless for like a training purpose. But if you have call recording set up in your phone system, like with your VoIP, which a lot do, then that will record the call.
Okay, interesting.
And then there's transcript services like Rev and things like that.
Well, that's good to know. Well,
cool.
we're getting to that point. Maddy, is there anything that we want to leave on? Any parting shots? So where can people find you? And
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. So we would love to hear from you. We'd love to give you a trial of the calls, chats, text answering, Facebook message answering, you name it. Bring your ideas to us and we can do that free trial for you. We are at Smith.ai. That's our website. You can chat with us there live and test out our chat solution. We also obviously are accessible by email, hello@Smith.ai. For your listeners, for you guys who are hearing this, if you use the code EGGS100, EGGS 100, you'll get $100 off your first paid month of service. So that's in addition to the trial, and you can use that off of calls and of chats. So I highly encourage that you try us out. Really go outside of your comfort zone, and I just advocate for delegating more. That's really the best way to grow a business, is to clear off those tasks and chores from your plate, those interruptions.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, thank you so much, Maddy. We really appreciate your time and taking your time out of quarantine to do this. So that's great. So thanks so much to everybody who tuned in and listened to the live stream or who's got the download of the podcast. Thanks to everybody who listens week after week, and feel free to reach out to the show if you'd like to get in touch with our guest or anybody else, or feel free to contact them directly, Smith.ai, Smith.ai, or it was hello@Smith.ai.com for the email.
No, hello@Smith.ai.
Or sorry,
the website is just Smith.ai. Super easy.
Yep, no .com. Sorry, I screwed it up. So, but that's all right. That's just one screw up through like this whole thing. That's pretty solid.
We did great.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, Maddy. Appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me.